Hello group, Jeff here. I'm going to do a couple of videos. The first one being M16 that Matt has given me permission to use for this video. These were taken with his 432 and his 10-inch RC. And he also gave me M20 with the same setup. So using these two images, I want to show you some of my workflow changes based on software changes that have come about because of updates. Photoshop has gotten updated quite a bit since my last Photoshop tutorial. Astro Flats Pro has been updated at the end of May, which requires some changes. Topaz has been updated quite a bit since I don't know if I've ever done anything about Topaz, but I'll give you some of my thinking on the denoise. So what we'll do is we'll start with Matt's first image, which is M16. And this image is in wonderful shape. This is a TIFF file right off the camera. Beautiful image. So I'm going to start with making it a 16-bit file. Then I'm going to copy that layer, and we'll do a denoise. And the reason why we're going to denoise immediately is going to become apparent shortly. I always did denoise at the end of my flow. I now do it at the beginning, and I will tell you why. I never used to read this stuff because I just considered it to be in the way. And it just so happened that I hit the arrow button by accident and saw that if you read this line here, apply as early as possible, this changes my thinking on using the denoise. And because you are applying it early in the flow, it's taking out a lot of the noise that are in the color channels, which helps you when you start processing. So what we'll do is I kind of look at the image and see that there's not a lot of noise, if any noise, in this image. So we don't need a lot. And if we click on the auto detect settings, you'll find out that they don't use any noise reduction at all on this image, but they sharpen it. So I'm just going to up this a little bit. And I'm kind of liking where we're going here. So I'm going to bring some of the original detail back. So I'm going to up that to 8. Not a lot, just a little bit. And that pulls some of Rock's camera data back into this processed image. We'll check the low light mode. And that's kind of brightened globally the whole image. And there's not a lot of noise, color noise in this, so we're just going to use a 0.16 setting here. And we'll call this complete. So I'll just click on the two. This is the original, and this is with the changes we just made. And it's very subtle, but a lot of it is in here that you see, the sharpening. So now I'm going to apply the Astro Flats. And with Astro Flats, the defaults used to be 20, 20, 20. And with this new version of Astro Flats, I find that those numbers no longer work. So on the smoothness, I am using between 32 and 48. And for this image, I like 40. Edge cleanup, I'm happy with 24. And dark noise, you want to be careful with. I'm not using as much dark noise reduction, so I'm at 16 on that. And you can see by looking at this image that it's very even now. So I'll OK this. And you can see that we've reduced the center glow that this image had. And that's the gradient. And because we've gotten rid of some of that glow, we've tightened up the histogram so that it's just got data now, which is what we want. So now we can start posting this. So I'm going to apply my Clear Sky 3 to this file, and you can see it's kind of affected the center of the image. So if you look in here, it's really helped Mr. Eagle out. So now we're going to create a duplicate, and this will be Deep Sky Enhance. And we will go down and apply Enhance Deep Sky Object and Reduce Stars. So we'll run that. Perfect. So if we look at this, we'll see that the stars got just a tiny bit smaller. And not only did the stars get a little bit smaller, but we've helped the nebula a little bit. So now we're going to add a level. And I now use the level to basically color correct. And the way I used to do it was I would pick the gray eyedropper and just try and find someplace dark. But that was a little too unreliable for me, so now I'm using the red, blue, and green sliders, and I'll just toggle between them and see how bad I am. And it just looks like maybe the blue or the green channel is just a tickle off. So we'll make some adjustments to these slider. We're just changing the black point. And that's good. Then I'll go back to the RGB and I'll just bring this down to 240. Okay, so now I've adjusted the colors and I'm kind of liking where it went. So now I'll duplicate this and we'll add a curves layer. And what I do with my curves is I'll create an anchor point about 190, 190. And the reason I do that is anything above this, so if I move these, actually, let me just delete that. If I move this, you can see the stars are getting bigger, and we don't want to make the stars bigger. So by anchoring here, 190 and 190, then I can drag this slider and I can really go nuts, and you see the stars are getting bigger. So I'm kind of liking this. right about there. We'll say okay. So the image is looking pretty good, but it's still a little dark. And before I do another thing, I'm just going to load in a Sharpen and do one more Sharpen using the Topaz Sharpen so that I can show you guys and gals the Topaz Sharpen. Now they have three models. There's the regular Sharpen, there's a stabilized Sharpen, and they have a focus Sharpen. And if you look here, it's suppressing noise, which we do not want to do. So I'm going to back off on this. And I'm going to back off on the Sharpen, maybe down to 32. And then we'll just go through the different settings here. Okay, so that's the Sharpen. This is stabilize. And when I'm looking at this stuff, I'm looking at the stars because Sharpen's going to affect the stars. So if you look in here on this star, it's got some little ears off of it. That will get affected by the Sharpen. And you can see how it's tightened them up, and that's not what we want. So let me do a focus Sharpen and see how that looks. That stabilizes kind of, because the image didn't have a lot of motion in it, it actually kind of elongated, it thinned the stars up and kind of elongated them, which we don't want. Now I like this. This is good. So the focus I've been using a lot. It really helps this stuff in here. All of this. Mr. Eagle's Edge. So I'm going to say apply. You know, computer's working hard here. And these are the latest versions. So I'm going to do a Vibrance pass, and this is for Simon. So if we go in to image adjust, oops, sorry. Image adjust Vibrance. And we'll bring the Vibrance up to about 24. And then we'll bring the saturation up to maybe 32. And what this will do for you is in Rock's presentations, he's been in his color adjust settings, he has everything default except saturation. And he's between 60 and 80-ish on his saturation, and that's removing the color if you have a color camera. So to get that color back, you want to add some more saturation in the image, which will bring back the color. The Vibrance also helps with that color adjust. So I'm liking this. I'm going to say okay. We've got some nice things happening in here. The image is starting to pop a little bit. So now what I want to do is I want to add 3 blank layers. One will be called Loom Red. Loom Green. And Loom blue. And what we're going to do is we're going to make 3 luminance channels that we can change the opacity and the mode of these channels to get a luminosity layer. So I'm going to go down to Vibrance because that's where the data is. There's no data here. So you have to go someplace where there's data. And we click on channels. And if you look at the red, the green, and the blue, we're going to use these as luminosity channels. So I'm going to select all, copy, and in the red, I'm going to paste it. I'm going back down to Vibrance, click on Channels, green. I'm going to select all, copy. In the green, I'm going to paste that. I'm going back down to Vibrance, going back to Channels, clicking on blue, select all, copy. And in the blue luminance channel, I'm going to paste that. So now I have the blue channel, the green channel, and the red channel. And I'm going to change the mode of the red luminance channel to luminosity. And you can see what that did. But I think it's just too much. So we're going to back off on this. To say maybe 33%. Then I'm going up to the green channel and do the same thing. Create a luminosity channel. I'm going to bring back the luminosity to 33%. And then on the blue channel, I'm going to do the same thing. Luminosity. And I'm going to bring that back 33% to 33%. And now you can see what that does to the image. I think it helped immensely. Gave the image some life. So this image has a lot of black in it to begin with, but we can also help the blacks, darken those blacks. So what I will do is I will merge down those luminosity channels into the Vibrance channel, and I will create a new layer called High Pass. And this High Pass layer is a filter, other, High Pass. And what you want to do is move the slider so that you're just picking up the blacks. So as you can see, the further left you go, the less black you get in the image. And then the further right you go, the more black. Oops. So we don't want to go quite that high. I'm thinking maybe 16. And you'll see that by doing that, our image looks funky. Well, we have to change the mode. And what we want is overlay. And if you look, you can see wherever the black was, it's darkened it up tremendously. So we want to bring this layer down to what we want. So maybe 24%. So if I turn this on and off, you can see what it's done by me flicking back and forth here. And I think that's helped the image. So we can merge this down. Oops, merge down. I'll create another layer and we'll do another curve. We'll lock the stars. Make it 190, 190, Now we can play with this just to brighten up that whole image a little bit. Don't want to wash out the eagle too much. I kind of like that. So there you have it. We went from that is the original, and this is where we ended up. This is the original, and this is where we ended up. We did some pretty cool things to this image. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time tweaking any settings. I just kind of threw these out there for you to see what happens when you can play with luminosity channels, with high pass channels, vibrance to get the color back into the image. It's just, there's a lot you can do. So I am done with this image. I'm going to stop the video, start it, a new video, and do the Matt's next image, which I think is M20. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the group.